Hey, welcome! So think about something you do dozens, maybe even hundreds of times a day without even a second thought. You type in a web address, you hit enter, and poof, a web page just appears. But what really happens in that split second? Well, let's dive into this incredible, super fast journey that happens right under our noses.
All right, so this is the big question, right? From the moment your finger lifts off that enter key to the instant that page pops up, your browser goes on this wild, multi-step mission. It happens so fast and so smoothly, it honestly feels like magic. But you know what? It's not magic. It's just really, really clever technology. And we're going to break it all down.
Okay, so before your browser goes on some long, complicated trip across the internet, the very first thing it does is look for a shortcut. It literally asks itself, hey, have I been to this site recently? It checks its own memory, the browser cache, your history, to see if it already has the files it needs. And if it does, boom, the page can load almost instantly.
Now, this is where things get really interesting, because there's a fundamental translation problem on the internet. We humans, we think in names, right? Like Google.com. It's easy to remember. But computers, servers, all the hardware, they don't. They think in numbers, these long strings of numbers called IP addresses. So how on earth do we bridge that gap?
Well, this is where the hero of our story steps in, the Domain Name System, or DNS. And the best way to think about it, as you see here, is that the DNS is basically the internet's giant global phone book. Its entire job is to take the name you typed and look up the right phone number, that IP address, so your browser knows exactly which computer in the world it needs to connect to. Simple, but absolutely crucial.
But finding that number isn't always a one-and-done deal. It's more like a little detective story. First, your browser checks for the address right there on your own device. No luck? Okay, it'll ask your Wi-Fi router. Still nothing? Then it goes up the chain to your internet service provider, your ISP. And if even they don't have it, the request goes all the way up to the massive root servers of the internet, which finally point the way until that address is found.
So, our browser has the address. It knows exactly who to talk to. But it can't just start shouting its request across the open internet. That's not very secure. Before any real data gets exchanged, a super important security step has to happen. You can think of it like a secret digital handshake.
This handshake is called an SSL/TLS handshake. It's basically this little back and forth where your browser and the website server agree on a secret code. From that point on, everything they say to each other is encrypted, creating a secure, private tunnel for your information to travel through. And that is what gives you that little lock icon up in your address bar, letting you know your connection is safe.
With that secure connection locked in, your browser can finally make its request. It sends out something called an HTTP request. And it's really just a polite digital message that says something like, "Hi there, I'm a Chrome browser, I speak English, and I would really like to get the main homepage for google.com, please." The server on the other end gets that message, checks it out, and if everything's good to go, it bundles up all the website's core files and sends them back. We call this the HTTP response. But here's the key. It doesn't send you the finished, pretty web page. Not yet. Instead, it sends the raw building blocks, like the blueprints for the site, that your browser has to put together.
The very first blueprint you get is HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language. This is the absolute skeleton of the page. It defines all the structure. It says, this part is a heading, this is a paragraph, put a button here, and leave a space for an image over there. It's just the bare bones. No style, no function, just structure. All right, next up is CSS, or Cascading Style Sheets. Now, if HTML was the skeleton, CSS is all the style. It's the skin, the clothes, the whole personality of the page. CSS tells the browser what colors to use, what fonts to load, and how to arrange everything on the screen. It's what turns that boring skeleton into something you actually want to look at. And the final piece of this puzzle is JavaScript. This is the brains of the whole operation. JavaScript is the code that makes a website interactive and dynamic. It's behind everything from cool animations and pop-up alerts to making sure you entered your password correctly in a login form. It's what brings that static page to life.
Now get ready for this, because this fact is kind of wild. Your browser doesn't just make one request for the HTML, one for CSS, and one for JavaScript. A modern web page is way more complex than that. To fully build a page like YouTube or Amazon, your browser often has to make over 100 tiny, separate background requests for every single image, icon, font, and script on the page.
And while all of this is going on, there are a couple of unseen helpers working behind the scenes to make the whole experience better. You've got cookies. Those are just tiny files that help a site remember you, which is how you stay logged into your email. And then you have CDNs, which are this really clever system for making the internet feel a whole lot faster.
And that CDN part brings up a really good question. I mean, think about it. If a website's main computer, its server, is in California, how is it possible that it loads almost instantly for someone in Mumbai? That's a huge distance for data to travel, even at the speed of light. Well, the answer is that second helper we just mentioned, the CDN.
So a content delivery network, or CDN, is just a genius solution to the problem of physical distance. Big websites don't just exist on one server anymore. They make copies of their content, especially heavy stuff like images and videos, and store them on servers all over the globe. So when you ask for the website, you're not getting it from California. You're getting it from a local server in a city that's much, much closer to you. It's the secret to why the modern web feels so fast, no matter where you are.
So let's do a super quick recap of that whole whirlwind journey. Your browser checks its cache for a shortcut. If there isn't one, it uses the DNS phone book to find the server's IP address. Then it sets up a secure, encrypted connection with that server. It politely asks for the page components. The server sends back the blueprints, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And finally, your browser puts it all together to build or render the website right there on your screen. And all of that happens in about 1 second. Just incredible.
And really, that's the hidden, complex world that lives behind one of the simplest things we do on our computers. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? When you send a text or tap your card to pay for coffee or ask your smart speaker about the weather, what other amazing, invisible journeys are you kicking off every single day? Something to think about. Thanks so much for tuning in.